Oh, all right. So for those of you who are new to Anamind, I'll just share my screen. Just to introduce, Anamind is a business planning solutions and consulting services company. That's all what we do. We love planning and we support companies in improving their planning processes. We have software solutions, we have services, and we also do training and uh, learning activities as part of the offering. As one of our services offering, we provide BI services as well, but we thought it would be a good idea to show with you and share with you what we have been doing in the demand planning BI space today in this. So let's talk about what is BI tool, right, and why we suggest that you should use it, right? So BI tool, it could be a Power BI, it could be Tableau, it could be ClickSense or any of those tools. Today, what we are going to show you is Power BI. But why do we use it and why we think it's useful? One of the reasons is that it's better than Excel and PowerPoint, right? So why? Because it is dynamic. In Excel, when you work, you have to make multiple sheets, multiple reports. In PowerPoint, you have to spend a lot of time in making those presentations. It's also static, right? And what do I mean by that? Which means that every month or every week, whatever your presentation frequency is or reporting frequency is, you have to redo it, at least a PowerPoint, right? Unless you have link, but then still it's not as dynamic as you would love it to be. And same thing for Excel. You have to spend considerable time on making the reports presentable every reporting cycle. Uh, it also has both features of Excel and PowerPoint combined into one, and it's I think much more powerful. Some of the computing capabilities are much better. We know that Excel has a limitation. Now, of course, Microsoft removed it a few years back, but still, if you load it with a very heavy data, you'll probably have to sit, tight before it opens up and shows you what it needs to show. That doesn't work with the BI tool because they're cloud-based. They can hold, they have elastic databases in the background, so it's much better. Also, it has much more presentation capabilities, and we'll see that when we show you the the demo. How good can you present the data and what different things, what good analytics you can do using a BI tool. One of the other things which I personally find very useful using a BI tool is the self-service analysis. So if I'm a demand planner or in a planning team, I don't have to answer each and every question that all my collaborators or stakeholders, even management wants to know about data. It is a cloud-based tool, so everybody has access to the report. There are drill down features, there is filters, so people can pretty much get their own answers of what they need, at least some things which are straightforward in the data, right? So that's why we call this self-service. You don't have to answer every question or work on the data and send it by emails to every person separately. That's a big advantages of the BI tool. And like I said, it's a web and mobile based, which means that everybody has access to it on the go as well. This is very useful for management as well as the sales team. So they don't have to, sit down and open a heavy Excel or PowerPoint sheets. They can just do fire up the app and get the data and play with it. Right. So let's go and see how this tool looks like and what we have to offer you in terms of today's session. Right. Okay, so here I am. This is Power BI on my screen. So let me minimize over here. This is how the screen looks like. Just to give you an overview, on the left-hand side, you see all the reports that dummy reports that we have made. So there's possibilities are here. On the main screen, you see the actual reporting dashboard itself. But let me show you some of the more interesting features that this allows you, which you probably not have as straightforward in the MS Office tools. Things like you can share this, right? You can share this report with anybody. You can email, you can have subscriptions so that people can subscribe to your emails and they'll get updated and notified when the report is ready. Very useful for the planning team. Again, you can have comments, which means you can collaborate and chat over here with your customers of the reports, right? So very useful features. Oops. Uh, All right, so I quite like these, so I wanted to show you quickly, and this is a quick session, so I will spend another about 15 to 20 minutes to just run through the reports. Now, these are dummy data, concentrate more on the look and feel of the reports, not so much on the definitions, on what that term means. We can discuss that in another session. Also, these are example reports. You can have your own reports. You can make it yourself, or you can take our help to do that. This is a blank canvas. What you're seeing is not the only possibility that the BI offers you, but just one of them. Let us also quickly see what are the things you can do using a BI. So you can make dashboards like the one you see on the screen. You can make any kind of dashboard here. You can also you can also do calculations, right? Like you do in Excel, and come up with your own formulas and report the numbers on the fly, which means you don't have to first compute it in Excel and then upload it over here. You can do it on the fly using queries in a BI tool like Power BI itself. And of course, you can make any number of reports. And unlike Excel, if in Excel, if you need 5 reports, you probably need 5 different tabs. But over here, you can have unlimited number of views in one single report itself. So I'll not spend time on dashboard, which is subjective, but let's look at some of the more interesting reports like the uh, make it full screen. Okay, so this is a MAPE report, something that all of us make, all the business planners make. There are multiple things on the screen. You can see a MAPE report graph. You can see a forecast value add report over here. You can see some of the charts and some filters over here. Let's quickly look at it. And this is the report we'll probably spend most time on, because this is the most used report and also my favorite. So what you can do, what I'm over here is that, say this chart is there, I can also then pop it out and make it a full screen. So the user can have a better view. Now, this is a company which sells a lot of products. It's probably something like a Tata Group, which is into cosmetics, F&B, pharma, fashion, apparel, chemicals, consumer goods. So you are, this is just for an example. So what does this report tell you? There's a lot of people still joining in. It has 3 bar graphs and 1 line chart, right? So what does it represent? This is, sorry. So this, it has 3 bar graphs. One is the gray line over here, which is the actual sales. Now imagine this to be our previous month's MAPE report, and we have for cosmetics this a gray bar, which shows the actual sales of cosmetics as a product category in the previous month. On the left hand side, we have a yellow bar, which is the baseline forecast, which is a statistical forecast. And on the right hand side, we have an orange bar, which is the actual forecast. And what's the difference between baseline and actual forecast? It's the baseline plus the overrides, which makes the actual forecast the working forecast, right? So this is what orange line is. So in this, and then the line chart is the MAPE that came in the error percentage. So we are showing multiple things. You are showing what was my system forecast, what was my changed forecast after the business overrides, and what was my actual, and then the error. So this is your first view. Now, what's when you show this, say I want to know, okay, at the business category level, it's the let's say consumer goods. Let's take that one, the last one. The error rate seems to be higher than everybody else. It's at 26%, right? So I want to know why. Why is my consumer goods category, higher? error rate than or less accurate than my other categories. So there is this a drill down button that we use, and we just drill it down. We activate it and then just click on the consumer goods. What it will do is it will take me inside this category, right? And it says that, okay, in consumer goods we sell electronics and we sell furniture, and its furniture seems to be pretty good in terms of the accuracy is 90% accurate, but the error is driven more by the electronics, right, where it is 36%. And it looks like that we were, and also see what it is telling us, that we had this baseline forecast of 2100. The sales team or whoever the management was probably not as optimistic, and we pulled it down to 1500, right? And it usually is the other way around, but in this case it seems like we pulled it down. We were not as confident, but the actuals, the consumer surprised us all, and they were even the sales were even higher than the baseline focus, and hence is the reason for that error. Now, do we want to know what exactly happened in electronic, what was driving this? If we want to further drill down, we click on it more, and now we get a sense of the locations and which are the locations which was driving this error. So we see, okay, Chandigarh seems to be good, Delhi seems to be good as well. It's Chennai, but then the volumes are low, but it's actually Bangalore which messed it up, right? So Bangalore, there was something wrong, why sales team or the management was not very confident about the numbers, and we pulled it down from 1200 to 700, but the actual sales were 1400. Now, next thing you do is you reconcile this with your notes of overrides of the previous month, and this is what a good system should be doing, is recording why the overrides was done. And this is why we suggest that there should be records. So if you have that, and if you're following a good process and having a good system, you can reconcile whether what was the reason that did not hold true for this override number to be pulled down, and what exactly happened. If not, then of course in the SNOP meeting, when you are starting with discussion of these numbers of the previous month, you can bring this up, and you don't have to discuss full consumer goods as a category. You don't have to discuss electronics as a category. You don't have to discuss furniture. You just drill it down. You just talk to the Bangalore guy and say, hey, look what happened. So it makes your life easier, and it just cuts out the noise and unnecessary question. If you further drill down to Bangalore, we figure out that it's the smart TV sales which was not expected. So it's that quick and easy. So if management wants to know what went wrong in consumer goods, the answer is very clear. It's a smart TV sales in Bangalore which pulled my accuracy down. And then you can have a discussion around that. So anybody who has access to the report can quickly figure it out. So it's not, and you see that while you can do it in probably in matter of seconds. And then you can also you can actually go down to the SKU level. I'm not spending more time on that. So I find this report extremely interesting. Just to give you an idea of the filters over here, now this is the, you can see how your revenues performed in terms of the location. You can have this design any ways you want. You can also have your lags over here, which means that if at the moment it's filtered for 0 lag, but if you you can add more filters if you are in a fashion business, and you obviously the same month forecast has not much meaning for you, but you want at least 3 months lag, you can do that. You can have any number of lags you want. If you have import dependency and it's like 6 months lag, which is important for your accuracy, then you can have those filters here, and you can see multiple lags. That if I have a 1 month filter, then how good is my accuracy, which is now 88% for say consumer goods, and versus the 0, which so I'm better off with a longer term forecast in this case, right? And you can have your other filters, like you want to just see any particular say powder as a product category and see how it performed. You can have more granular details. You can have all those filters. I'm not going into the details, but let's talk about the FVA, which is a very, very important metrics. And most companies, unfortunately, do not use this metrics good as much as they should do. And that's because of the lack of a good SNOP process in place. So basically what this report is telling us is how good was your changes to the forecast? So in the previous graph report, we saw that forecast was pulled down, or it was changed to a different number. Over here, we see that whether that added positive value to the accuracy or the negative one. In the example that we took of the smart TV sales in Bangalore, is obviously messed up the forecast. So at least the accuracy would have been much better had the had we followed the system baseline forecast. So this is what that report tells us, is that this is your actual forecast, which is an overridden forecast, and this is your error based on the final overridden forecast, and this was your baseline forecast, and this is the error based on your statistical baseline forecast. So basically your accuracy got worse because of your override. So it's minus 16% because your error is now 39%. Had you taken the baseline forecast only, then your error would have been just 23%. So ideally, the answer is very clear. Should the FVA be positive or negative? Obviously, it should be positive, because the whole purpose of an SNOP process of collaboration is to improve upon the forecast, baseline forecast, right? So the only reason you would want to override the statistical forecast is because there is a good business reason to do it, and you think that the baseline forecast is not accurate. You want to adjust it with the business knowledge and make it more and more accurate. But if it, in the whole process, is making it worse, like these red lines here, then something is wrong in the inputs, right? So you would always want this to be positive. The way this report should be used is that you use it while you're discussing with the sales team, because they are the people who actually override the forecast most, and say, hey, look, if my forecast accuracy is going to go down by 50% with your inputs, then I'm better off just taking the statistical forecast, right? Because I'm 3%, I'm like 97% accurate, but you messed it up to 50%, right? So obviously you don't want that to happen. There's something wrong in the inputs. So this also is not about pointing fingers, but it also helps them understand that, look, this is getting tracked, and they need to bring in more better value on the table and ensure that they are on the green zone rather than red zone. Obviously, this green zone, red zone means very different in today's world. So yeah, but probably we can use the analogy in the demand planning process as well. So this is the FVA report. Let's quickly now see another one, error buckets, right? So let me first show you. All right. So in this report, what we have done is, now you found the error, right, in the previous report. What we want to do now is figure out what went wrong, and make it easier for us to improve upon in the next cycle. And for those of you who are working with thousands of SKUs, and I know a lot of you would be working on thousands of SKUs, it's not easy for you to figure out where exactly to show, or how do you, in the short time frame that we have between the two cycles, how do we actually ensure that we improve upon the previous cycle. So one of the ways that we have implemented the reports is that bucketing it into a different nomenclatures. So over here, you see three buckets, right? And this is a graph, and this is over here, you see the same thing in the tabular format. One is the under forecasted. So all those items that we under forecasted, we put them in one bucket. Then there's another side to it, which is over forecasted. How many of us, how many SKUs we over forecasted? And there are two other buckets. You see one of them over here, which is forecasted but not sold, right? We wanted to sell them. Our system predicted it to be sold, but we didn't. And then there is a fourth one, which you don't see over here, which is the opposite of this third one, which is we sold without forecasting, right? So these are the predominantly four major categories that you would want to put your errors into. And then what do we see? In this case, we see that obviously the problem lies in over forecasting. Right, fine. We have 10% of the error contribution coming from the under forecasting. We have this very, very minuscule coming from forecasted but not sold. Nothing in sold but forecasted. But this is where our problem is. Now, this you relate it to FVA, and you figure out that that means the most of the statistical forecast is getting overridden with optimism of being able to sell more, but we are not kind of getting there, right? So then you further drill it down. Sorry, I'll probably to say what are the different categories. I can do it over here as well. You go it down and see within cosmetics and fast moving, which one are we, over forecasting. You go down further and further and further, and the same thing. So this drill down feature is extremely useful in figuring out the granularity of where the problem lies, right? And it tells you very, very quickly. It's kind of the same way we do it in Pivot, but just the graphics and the ability to do it quickly and with all these filters over here makes it even better and more useful than the pivot tables that we have. And without worrying about the the file getting hanged and not being able to access. What we have also done over here is on the right hand side, we try to calculate the value of this error. So because of over forecasting, what is my total error value of this item? So what 177 million rupees in this case is my error values. It's just the don't ask me whether that's the right way. You can come up with your own definition as is suitable, or you can work with your finance, but it's just to show you what is the what are things you can bring into one report to show different aspects to it. Of course, you can have your locations. We earlier saw Bangalore. Right now, if I want to see same thing in Bangalore, how does it show? So Bangalore has only one issue. It's all over forecasting, right? So it makes it just easy to talk to the Bangalore sales head, right, or the area sales manager or whoever it is, that hey, look, this is my problem with you guys. You're not under forecasting. You're not selling what you're not forecasting, things like that. But it's just you're too over optimistic. So what is the issue? Whatever, you can do that. Or is it only 1 month problem, or is it across? You can have your filters of the month. You can have your forecast filters. So it just makes it easier. Also, the data is in front of you. So if you're actually talking to the Bangalore sales guy, before even you ask these questions, he should be able to see it himself. What is the issue in my region, right? So he goes and figures out. He doesn't have to come to you and ask that, hey, Rishi, oh, you tell me it's over forecasted. Which products are getting over forecasted? Go drill down, get the information yourself. You can even have his own people, if the process is that granular, listed as a filters, and say, okay, which sub region or which area manager is the issue, or which product, even more importantly, is the issue. So it's all self-service. The data is out there. It's just so quickly able to figure out. Another important one, interesting one, is the bias report. I know we get a lot of questions on this bias report. Is sounds very exciting and interesting, and especially because it's not as much deployed as one would want to be. So you can have your bias report. And now bias definition, you can have whether you want it 3 months, 4 months, what kind of time horizon you want to take for your bias to be computed. You can also have it, and you must have a tracking signal associated with the bias, because otherwise you don't get to know the magnitude of the bias, whether you should worry about it or not. So again, like I said, I'm not getting into the academic definitions of what bias or tracking signal is, or how it should be calculated. It's part of the course, or you would have understanding yourself. But you can have these over here to even further drill down and zero down on where you should be focusing on amongst the thousands of SKUs that you may be having. You can have it, you can either see it for a company as a whole, or you can select one of the product categories. Say if I choose F&B and see, okay, there is a negative bias, continuous under forecasting of breakfast mix in RTE category of this 480 gram SKUs. And I think we have taken 4 months data here, so we can easily say that's a continuous under forecasting of about 100 units in this particular SKU. But the traffic signal is about 0.27, which if I was a planner, yes, I would flag it, because in my data this is still very high. But fortunately, it's not above 0.5, which will show heavy bias. But definitely the bias exists, but it looks to be much better in these cases. So here it is 494 continuous over forecasting, but the bias is just 0.11. So it raises an alarm, but it also kind of tunes the intensity of the alarm, right, with the next column, that how much should you be worried, right? Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be talking to the sales guys, or taking this into your process improvement. You should be, But if this tracking signal number is much more closer to 1, then you should be more worried about and probably blowing a whistle. So again, very, very important report. Okay, exception report. Now this is something that I think all of us work with. Again, subjective definition on what you want your exceptions to be. In this case, we have taken exception to be less than or more than 50% compared to YOY, which can be just about any definition. This report can also be used in today's scenario for demand sensing, right? And if you're actually doing it on a more rigorous basis, like a weekly or a daily, trend analysis, and you can see, okay, how the consumer demand is moving, and whether you should take up something for discussion, or you need to adjust the forecast. This is the kind of report you should make. Have your definition, lock down your definition. Of course, you can revise it, but for working purpose, you can have some kind of a definition locked in, and then track. So if you have like 5,000 SKUs, let the system throw out the report of a certain exception that you must look at before you discuss the forecast or finalize it. Again, filters remain the same, but you can have your um, seasonality chart over here. Let me just pull this and make it bigger. So it basically tells us how the product performed in previous periods. It could be previous year, previous month, whatever way you want to set it up, and how it is doing today, and why you should be looking at it, right? So if a system is showing you an exception, that okay, this, as per your definition, this was an exception, this product is growing more than 50% versus what it was doing last year. So definitely first question that you'll ask is, what was the sales last year? Or if you are discussing with the sales guys or the management, their first thing they'll ask is, what was the sales last year? And what about the previous year? What about the previous month? Why do you say this is an exception? This graph will give you all those answers. It will give you what was my last 2 years sales, of whichever, how many ever periods you want to, what has been my trend. It is rising. So in this one, you can see there is some kind of seasonality in this product. It's also a slightly shifting levels from this to over here. So it is a rising trend, and there is some kind of exception in some month. I'm not getting into details. You can also click over here and then figure out what that why this product has been highlighted, and just look at that particular product. Again, very, very interesting. And I think in current scenario, for demand sensing purpose, you should have reports like this to quickly be on top, especially because you would have a mandate as well to run the process more rigorously on a daily basis or whatever, and you can't be sieving through 5,000 SKUs to figure out where you should be looking at. And you can actually, this with report can make you hero. Very, very simple report, and but very, very effective in today's scenarios as well. Priority chart. Now, I know some of you must be familiar with it. For some of you may find this pretty interesting. I personally like it. I'm not getting into the filters, but this again helps. So all the reports that I'm showing you now for the last two, and this is actually help us zero down on where to focus, right? It's kind of management by exception. You don't have to look at everything which is out there. You need to look at things which requires attention, and these are the reports which are bringing out the attention. They're screaming for help, and this is where you should be looking at. So this is the priority chart, and on the left hand side is your actual sales. On the y-axis is your actual sales. On the x-axis is your error percentage, right? And what we have done is we have divided it into a 4 imaginary quadrants. The top left is those products which are high value items and but have a low error. On the right hand top corner is the high value and high error, and then there is a low value and low error, and low value and high error. So once you do that, it becomes very clear where your eyes should be looking at this point, right? It's obviously this one, right? So anything which is over here in this quadrant is my high value and high error. You don't want that, because the cost of error, like we saw in the other report, would be very, very high in these cases. High value and low error, perfect. This is what we want. Low value and high error, livable, right? Because at least it's not causing as much damage as much we would want error to be lesser, but it can wait. Low value, low error, perfect. So anything which is on the left hand side is fine. You don't want just anything over here. Anything which is trending towards that quadrant is something in this scenario which looks very nice, because nothing much is on this quadrant. You would want to be a gatekeeper over here and be a proactive in pulling these guys down which are kind of trending towards it. Similarly, you can have another quadrant which is high error versus the forecast value add. Right, and this one is interesting because it actually tells you again what's going wrong in your collaborative process. And this again, in the post-COVID world, at least in the shorter term, this can be very useful, because more than the statistical forecast, you would be collaborating a lot with your field guys, with your management, and obviously statistical forecast for a lot of you would not be working at this point. It will be the overridden forecast, right? It will be the manual forecast, but that's where you want to also see on how good are those inputs from the market, just to give the input back to your stakeholders on where they could be going wrong. Remember, this is not to point fingers at who is wrong. It is to help the process improve better. It is to give intelligence. Our job as planning team is to give intelligence to the rest of the folks in the company, so that they can improve. And this is what you would be able to do. So what this tells you, that you can make your error limits, right? You can you can say, okay, I'm okay with up to negative error of 10,000 units and a positive error of 10,000 units. So this is my boundary. And but I'm not okay with anything which makes my forecast worse than 10%. So negative value add of up to 10%, I'm okay, but not beyond that. Again, this is a definition which is an example. You can make your own. You can be much stricter, or you can be more lenient, up to you. But then this is what, if you plot a chart like that and scatter your products, this is how it is likely to look like. And where you are likely to focus on is something again on the top hand right corner, which is high value, high forecast value added, but and high error, right? That is where you do not want things to be, and you would want to pull them out. So you can define your error quadrants. You can you can make your own definitions, and just to ensure that your eyes and everybody else's are focused on not making things in a particular quadrant, whether it is this chart or this one. Which means that, okay, so overall to a large extent, your process should remain under control, and with the acceptable error margins. I'll just quickly take a sip. Okay, what else do we got? We got override report. This basically tells us on how much overrides were done. Again, this is something that your systems will not tell you, because it's all systems capture overrides, but there's no one quick place which tells, okay, what was my overall baseline forecast, and how much did everybody change it to, especially in terms of revenue. I think this report would be very good in terms of revenue, because units would be perhaps not apple to apple addition. But for example, if we say it was 416K as my forecasted value, and it got changed to 595, so 43% of the baseline forecast was changed in this month's cycle, for instance. Right, so whether that's not good, right? If I'm heading the planning process, I would want the changes to be very, very minimal, not in current circumstances, but as a business as usual, where statistical forecasts are good. So ideally, as a planning team, we would want changes to be minimal, and we don't want statistical forecast to be overridden to this extent of 40% or 50%. Should be really under 10%. Otherwise, there's not much use in the in doing the statistical forecast. But when we see something like this, what's the first question I would ask is it true? Is it like, are we changing the forecast across the country by 40, across the company by 43%, or is it some particular region, product category? Where is this? What is driving getting this 43%? And this is what any management would ask you, right? And that is what you should be able to tell. Or if you have a report like this, which is self-service, they should be able to figure it out. So I want to know, okay, as beauty cream, what's going on over there? Am I changing it on a similar basis over there, or is it food? Okay, probably it's not set up in that way, but that's why showing blank. But we can figure that out, right? So maybe it's just one particular or couple of particular category or locations which is driving that, and which is understandable, and you need to go and focus there. It could be new products, right, where a lot of overrides are done. So if you figure out the answer and answer is satisfactory, the report's job is done. If you figure out an answer and answers are not satisfactory, and then also report's job is done, because then you know that is something to worry about. So either ways, that's the purpose of reporting, and reporting quickly, timely, and accessible to all is what how BI reports help. You can also know which function is doing how much hard work in overriding, right? So you as a planning team would be overriding, the sales guys obviously would be overriding a lot, some bit by marketing. When we say supply chain, it's basically logistics or supply planning, a part of constraints based forecasting, and then the management. So who is the culprit? So if you figure out it's the management which is overriding the most, then you have very easy conversation and perhaps nothing at all. But if it is sales, then you know, okay, right, this is where the problem is. If it is marketing, supply chain, so you can actually slice and dice the data in various ways to zero down on whom you should be talking to, what you should be talking to, and with what data. That is the whole purpose of doing these reports very, very quickly. And before you talk to them, they obviously know what you're going to talk about. And that's a big win. I didn't have these reports when I was a planner, but that would have made my job very easy, right? We would start a meeting with a smile. I know what you did, right? So, and it just makes it easier conversation. You better come prepared. Otherwise, what happens, at least in my time, and I'm pretty sure it happens a lot today as well. Rishi, what happened? This doesn't look like your guys are forecasting. Or what happened in beauty cream in North or in Bangalore? Okay. I don't. Let me check with my guys and figure out, and let me come back to you. That tomorrow never comes, right? And then the meeting gets over with a cup of coffee, and you never actually get anything out of it, right? So here you are, more productive meeting, more data-driven meeting, more quick and the actionable meeting, right? There's nothing that would needs to be done later on and then shared over emails, and another call needs to be set up. It's more productive, and I would love it for that purpose. You can see a lot of other reports over here, which we are not covering today because this was specific for demand planning. There's probably one report I can show you is, which relates to demand, is demand versus stock, right? So here what we have done is we have again make this scatter chart, which is one of our favorites, just because it puts the data in such a good perspective. You have a total demand on the y-axis, and then you have the stock on the x-axis, right? And then whenever you make a scatter chart like that, it immediately 4 quadrants come up, and you can name them anything you want. By the way, I was in one of the IBF conferences in Dubai, and the Nestle guys presented these priority chart in a very interesting way, and they had actually made given names to these quadrants in the form of animals. I'm forgetting what those animals were, but this was like bulls, and so some kind of analogy with the animals, bulls, rabbits, whatever niceties planners had or affinity they had towards their animals. But that you can make it more fun exercise that way as well, as long as you don't have very serious supply chain head and CEO. If they are game, then you can make it very interesting as well. But what you do here is that what this quadrant shows here is that if some this quadrant is high demand and less stock, and you don't want anything to be here, so it quickly tells you that okay, everything is good. You're not missing any sales because of loss of stock, and on this side you're also not carrying any higher inventory, which means that there's less demand but you're carrying high stock. So what you want about where you are is in these two quadrants, which is more or less acceptable. You can have a similar thing for the raw material as well. So these were some of the reports that we have done, and there have been many others, but which are not in the example over here. And you can do similar things for the supply side, finance, and many other things. That's why we like BI, and we wanted to show you. For those of you who know us and need any help on the BI, we actually work only on Power BI. So if you need any help on that, we'll be happy to help. For those of you who don't know, can note down our details, and we'll be happy to help you. If you are already good at BI, you have team internally, please go ahead and start deploying it for the finance, or for the planning, supply chain planning function, because it will make your life easier and much better. I'm sorry for overshooting a bit today, but thanks for being there. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you.